Hey, spooky people, it's your best friend Kenny here, and we are moving along with Tier 3, Part 2 of my Iceberg series. You can go check my Iceberg playlist for the other entries in this series. This is the Unsolved Mysteries and Weird Things Iceberg by Juan the Pickle. Again, this is Tier 3, and this is Part 2 of Tier 3. If you're unfamiliar with iceberg charts or iceberg series, the idea is there are stories at the very top, which are things most people know, things that aren't super disturbing. And as the deeper you get into the iceberg, the more strange, the more obscure, the more disturbing the stories get. So we've done tiers 1 and 2, and now we are on tier 3. Let's get spooky. Pet Scop. Pet Scop is actually one of my favorite internet mystery videos. It's a web series that uses a type of digital horror. The idea is a lost PlayStation game called Pet Scop is discovered by a narrator named Paul. Now, you never see Paul, and instead, you just watch Paul play through this lost, strange Pet Scop game. The videos themselves are strange, cryptic, sort of seems like a bunch of nonsense. But as the narrative goes on, the more bizarre, the more disturbing the story gets. And you start to learn that Paul not only is an unreliable narrator, but he has a relationship with this game that he hasn't really disclosed. Pet Scop blurs the lines between fiction and reality as the game starts to interact with Paul's real life. And, remember, we're supposedly watching Paul create these videos for someone else. One of my favorite YouTubers, Nexpo, did a definitive video on Pet Scop, but it's about 5.5 hours long between the two parts. So it's a long watch. I think Pet Scop is absolutely worth watching the entire series if you enjoy horror, if you enjoy unsettling YouTube content, which, you're here watching my videos, so you must be. You can check Pet Scop out on YouTube, and there's tons of other videos sort of explaining other people's interpretations of the meaning. But the interesting thing is the videos are so cryptic that there really isn't a right answer. There really isn't a right answer to what Pet Scop is about. And you'll find wildly different interpretations on what it means. The M Cave. The M Cave is a cave located in the Mojave Desert near the Nellis Air Force Base in Nevada. It became notorious when Kenny Veach, a hiker and a YouTuber, claimed to explore it in 2014. Veach posted a comment on a YouTube video describing his experience with the cave. He claimed its entrance was shaped like a perfect M and that he felt intense vibrations and an overwhelming sense of fear as he approached it. He fled. He later attempted to relocate the cave, documenting his search in a series of videos. However, the cave disappeared without a trace.
And I'm looking for a cave that I found, and I didn't have a sidearm when I was here before, and something about that cave just spooked me. Out of all the caves I've ever gone in, this one just made my body vibrate. The closer I got to it, the crazier my body felt, and I was like, all right, I'm not going to go in there right now, but I'm coming back someday. And I talked to some people on YouTube, and I told them, hey, I'm coming out here, you know, because they kind of called my hand on it. So I don't know if there's going to be anything to it, but it might be interesting. If I can find it, I got to relocate it, and this is a big mountain range I'm in.
Veach's description of what he felt as he approached the cave fueled a lot of online speculation about the cave, right? Some believe that there's paranormal activity related to the cave or government experiments. Veach would then disappear, which has made the mystery of the M cave even more mysterious. His phone was found near an abandoned mine shaft, and his truck was located at an empty trailhead, but his body was never recovered. Other YouTubers have attempted to locate the M cave, but no one has found it. Some believe it may have been a figment of Veach's imagination or a hoax, while others believe it's a real location that has been intentionally hidden. The Great Molasses Flood. Now, this is something that could only have happened in the early 1900s, right? The Great Molasses Flood, also known as the Boston Molasses Disaster, was an event that occurred on January 15th, 1919 in the North End neighborhood of Boston. A massive storage tank holding over 2.3 million gallons of molasses burst. This tank, which was owned by the United States Industrial Alcohol Company, was used to store molasses for the production of rum and industrial alcohol. The rupture sent a wave of molasses estimated to be 25 feet high and traveling 35 miles per hour, surging through the streets of North End. The thick, sticky molasses engulfed buildings, crushed structures, and trapped people. The disaster resulted in 21 deaths and over 150 injuries. Investigators would pin the cause of the disaster on the poor construction of the tank, which was made with substandard materials and inadequate safety measures. The weather was unseasonably warm in the days leading up to this disaster, which may have caused an increased amount of pressure within the tank. It's also believed that the molasses began to ferment inside the tank, causing carbon dioxide gas that further increased the internal pressure within the tank. Rescue efforts were hampered by the thick molasses, which made it difficult to reach and free trapped individuals. The cleanup took weeks, with the molasses seeping into the foundations of buildings and into the harbor. Of course, many lawsuits were filed against the company, resulting in settlements for the victims and their families. The Great Molasses Disaster led to improved safety standards for the construction and maintenance of large storage tanks. This event has, of course, become part of Boston's local folklore, with lots of stories and legends surrounding the events. Some Bostonians even claim that on hot summer days, you can still smell the faint scent of molasses in the North End. The Collar Bomb Bank Robbery. Now, this is a weird one, and it's a somewhat recent one. I'm surprised I haven't heard it. The Collar Bomb Bank Robbery refers to an incident that occurred in Erie, Pennsylvania on August 28, 2003. It involved a man named Brian Wells who delivered pizza to a remote location and found himself in the middle of a terrifying situation. After arriving to deliver the pizza, Wells was confronted by a group of individuals who had constructed a bomb collar, a device strapped around his neck that resembled a bomb. He was instructed to rob a local bank to obtain money to secure his release. The situation escalated, and he was forced to comply with the demands of his captors. He would rob a PNC bank of over $8,000. Wells was apprehended by law enforcement, and the collar bomb was detonated while he was in police custody. the bomb exploded, killing Wells. The entire situation was so strange that it left law enforcement with a lot of questions. Their investigation revealed a broader conspiracy involving several accomplices, leading to arrests. However, the case is still not fully fleshed out. There are theories about whether Wells was a willing participant or an unwitting victim. This reminds me of the Saw movies, right? The Little Albert Experiment. The Little Albert Experiment was a controversial psychological experiment conducted in 1920 by John B. Watson and Rosalie Rayner at Johns Hopkins University. It is horrifyingly unethical. The subject was a 9-month-old infant known as Little Albert. Watson and Rayner sought to demonstrate that fear can be learned or conditioned. They presented Albert with a white rat, which he initially showed no fear of. Then they paired the presentation of the rat with a loud, startling noise, in this case, a hammer striking a steel bar. After repeated pairings of the rat and the loud noise, Albert began to cry and show fear at the sight of the rat alone. He had been conditioned to associate the rat with the unpleasant noise. Albert's fear also generalized to other furry objects and animals, like a rabbit, a dog, and even a Santa Claus mask. Now, there are a lot of issues with this experiment. The first obviously being that this is a 9-month-old that they caused severe trauma in, right? They also believe, or people now believe, that there wasn't proper informed consent, that Albert's mother was not fully informed about the nature of the experiment and its potential risks. Watson and Rayner also did not attempt to uncondition Albert's fear, leaving him with a potentially lasting phobia. Despite the problems with this experiment, it had a significant impact on psychology. It provided evidence for classic conditioning in humans, showing how emotional responses can be learned through association. It contributed to the development of behavioralism, a school of thought that emphasized the role of environmental factors in shaping behavior. The identity and fate of little Albert are unknown. Recently, people have decided that it could have been a child named Douglas Merritt, a child who died at 6 years old. There's some belief that if this is true, his underlying condition may have affected his responses and made him more vulnerable to harm. I don't like stories about kids, so I don't like that entry. What caused the Bronze Age collapse? The Bronze Age collapse was a period of widespread societal collapse that occurred around the end of the Late Bronze Age, around 1200 BC, in the Near East, Europe, and North Africa. It was a time of great upheaval and change, marking the transition from the Bronze Age to the Iron Age. There is no single universally accepted explanation for the Bronze Age collapse. Instead, it's likely that a combination of factors contributed to the widespread societal disruptions. Some of the most prominent theories are climate change. Evidence suggests a period of significant climate change around this time, including droughts and cooler temperatures, which could have disrupted agriculture and trade, leading to famine and economic instability. Sea people. There were mysterious seafaring raiders that attacked and destabilized many coastal cities and civilizations during this period. Their origins are unclear, but their impact was significant. Internal strife and revolts. Many Bronze Age civilizations experience internal conflicts, societal unrest, and revolts, which may have weakened them and made them more vulnerable to external threats. Overpopulation and resource depletion. Some scholars argue that overpopulation and the overexploitation of resources led to environmental degradation and economic decline, contributing to the collapse. Technological advancements. The development of ironworking may have disrupted the existing bronze-based economy and power structures, leading to instability. Now, this is one of those situations where you look at this and you say, history seems to be repeating itself, right? You know, you read through all these explanations of what caused the collapse of this society, you know, this age, and you could sort of see, hey, you know, we got a lot of those right now. So, I don't know. I know a lot of people like to say we're living in a decline. I'm an optimist, so I choose not to believe that, and I hope they're wrong. But, you know, societal unrest, deep problems as they're described in this, this entry, seems pretty familiar. The North Hollywood Shootout. The North Hollywood Shootout was also known as the Battle of North Hollywood, and it was an intense and dramatic confrontation between two heavily armed bank robbers, Larry Phillips Jr. and Emil Matasarino, and officers of the Los Angeles Police Department, that occurred on February 28th, 1997. Phillips and Matasarino attempted to rob a Bank of America branch in North Hollywood. They were armed with illegally modified, fully automatic rifles, wearing body armor that could withstand most handgun rounds. LAPD patrol officers arrived on the scene as the robbers were exiting the bank, which led to an immediate exchange of gunfire. The robbers' firepower and body armor gave them a significant advantage over the standard-issued handguns and shotguns carried by the responding officers. SWAT teams were called in, but even they were outgunned initially. This shootout unfolded live on TV, with news helicopters circling around the intense firefight. LAPD officers had to resort to unconventional tactics, raiding a nearby gun store to acquire heavier weapons to combat the robbers. After a shootout lasting nearly 45 minutes, both robbers were killed. 12 police officers and 8 civilians were injured in the fight. Many cars and a lot of surrounding property was damaged or destroyed. There was nearly 2,000 rounds of ammunition fired. The shootout led to law enforcement seeking to have access to more powerful weapons and better body armor. The LAPD, as well as many other police departments across the U.S., subsequently upgraded their equipment to include patrol rifles and body armor capable of stopping rifle rounds. The incident also led to changes in police training and tactics, emphasizing the need for better preparation for confronting heavily armed suspects. In the last few years, there's been a lot of talk about, and rightfully, a lot of talk about the militarization of police. And, this incident was something that heavily influenced these more heavily armed police departments that you see. So now you have local, suburban, and small town police departments that have massive, massive weaponry. The Buxhowden and Chase moving coffins cases. The Buxhowden and Chase family crypts, which are both located in Barbados, are famous for their moving coffins. Although these cases are separated by time and location, they share eerie similarities that have fueled speculation about supernatural forces. The Buxhoughton Crypt is located in the graveyard of St. Joseph's Parish Church in Barbados. In 1812, when the crypt was opened for the burial of Thomasina Clark, the coffins inside were found in disarray. This happened although the vault was heavily sealed with a stone door and no signs of forced entry. The coffins were rearranged, but the disturbance reoccurred each time the crypt was opened for subsequent burials. This led to theories of floods, earthquakes, or, of course, ghosts. The Chase Vault is located in the cemetery of the Christchurch Parish Church in Barbados. And starting in 1812 with the burial of Thomas Chase, the heavy lead coffins within the vault were repeatedly found displaced and in disarray whenever it was opened. Again, the vault was heavily secured, this time with a massive marble door with no evidence of human intrusion. There were several investigations to try to solve why these coffins were moving, and eventually the coffins were removed from the vault and buried elsewhere in the churchyard. Now, this is one of those situations where it seems like the most likely solution is the answer, right? So I think you have two sort of answers to this. And the first is maybe there's some sort of like earthquake or, seismic activity causing the ground to move, which would cause the coffins to move. Or those vaults weren't as sealed as people thought they were, or someone was able to get into those vaults and move them around, whether it was for hoax purposes or grave robbing purposes or whatever. I think that's your answer right there. The Blood Falls of Antarctica. The Blood Falls are an incredible natural phenomenon in Antarctica. It's a blood red waterfall that flows out of the Taylor Glacier, not the Taylor Swift Glacier. She doesn't have a glacier yet, as far as I'm aware, and stains the ice-covered surface of West Lake Bonny in the McMurdo Dry Valleys. Well, why does it look like blood? Well, the water flowing from the Blood Falls is heavily rich in iron. When iron-rich water comes in contact with air, it oxidizes, which creates the distinctive blood red color. The water originates from a subglacial lake that was trapped beneath the Taylor Glacier millions of years ago. This lake is extremely salty, kind of like a lot of people I know, and rich in iron. Now, this is sort of interesting because when I think of Antarctica, I just think of a vast white and gray nothingness. So to see this waterfall and these visually striking colors in that area, it's pretty fascinating. The Pollock Twins. The Pollock Twins, Gillian and Jennifer, at the center of a case of possible reincarnation. In 1957, their older sisters, Joanna and Jacqueline, were tragically killed in a car accident in Hexham, England. A year later, their mother Florence gave birth to two twins, Gillian and Jennifer. As the twins grew, their parents noticed striking similarities between them and their deceased sisters. Jennifer had birthmarks that were nearly identical to those of Jacqueline, including a birthmark on her forehead and another above her waist. The twins seemed to possess knowledge of places and events that they had never been to or experienced. But these places and events were familiar to their deceased sisters. They recognized toys and places in Hexham that they had never seen before. When the twins were around 4 years old, they began to ask for toys that had belonged to their deceased sisters, even referring to them by name. They also had memories of the accident itself, describing details that they could not have known. Now, of course, there are skeptics, right? And this Pollock Twins case is widely discussed and heavily debated. Some people believe that the twins' experience provides a strong evidence for reincarnation and suggests that the consciousness of Joanna and Jacqueline were born into Jillian and Jennifer. Others suggest that this is a case of false memories, suggesting that the twins may have absorbed information about their deceased sisters from their parents or other sources. Others suggest because their parents, who strongly believed in reincarnation, may have unconsciously influenced the twins' behavior and memories. Now, regardless of where you land on whether they were reincarnated or not, the Pollock Twins case fueled interest in reincarnation research and has contributed to the ongoing debate about the nature of consciousness and the possibility of an afterlife. I think when a parent loses their child in such a tragic circumstance, I think it sort of has such a deep psychological effect on that parent that they may unconsciously do or say things that could cause this type of behavior. So I believe the parents likely unknowingly influenced this behavior out of the Pollock twins. I think that's the most likely explanation. But, if you want to believe in reincarnation and the afterlife, good for you. The Long Island serial killer. The Long Island serial killer was a serial killer believed to be responsible for the deaths of 10 to 16 people over a period of nearly 20 years. The victims were mostly women associated with the sex work industry, and they were found along Ocean Parkway near Gilgo Beach on Long Island, New York. Recently, very recently, like last year, a suspect was arrested. This might be coming off the Unsolved Mysteries chart, but there's no conviction yet. The first remains were found in December 2010 during a search for Shannon Gilbert, a missing sex worker. Over the following months, more remains were discovered scattered along the remote stretch of coastline. Most of the victims were young women who advertised their services online. The killer would typically wrap the bodies in burlap sacks and dispose them along the highway. Many of the victims were strangled. In July 2023, Rex Heuermann, an architect from Long Island, was arrested and charged with the murders of 3 of the 4 Gilgo 4 victims: Megan Waterman, Melissa Barthelemy, and Amber Costello. He is also the prime suspect in the murder of Maureen Brainerd Barnes, the 4th victim in the Gilgo 4. In October 2023, Heuermann was charged with 2 additional murders, bringing the total to 6. These charges were for the deaths of Jessica Taylor and Valerie Mack, whose cases had not previously been linked to the Gilgo Beach murders. There are still investigations ongoing, exploring whether Heuermann may be linked to other unsolved murders. This is one of those cases where they were able to find this guy based on people's DNA database evidence. This is another one of those cases where, someone did a 23andMe and they were able to sort of backwalk the DNA to find this guy. So is it a good thing that they caught this guy? Yes. But it's also one of those things where, there was a big rush to just sort of give your DNA to these companies to find out, your heritage. It was neat to find out that you're, 12% Scottish or, 3% barbarian. That DNA that people are, willingly giving up has now become a resource for law enforcement. And I don't think a lot of people know that. Violet Jessup. Violet Jessup was an ocean liner stewardess and a nurse who earned the nickname Miss Unsinkable for surviving not one, not two, but three major maritime disasters in the early 20th century. First, she was on the Olympic. She was working aboard the RMS Olympic, the Titanic's sister ship, when it collided with the British warship, the HMS Hawk. While the Olympic was damaged, it managed to return to port without sinking. Jessup was on the Titanic when it struck an iceberg and sank. She helped load lifeboats with women and children and eventually escaped in a lifeboat. The Britannic. In 1916, during World War I, Jessup was serving as a nurse aboard the HMHS Britannic, another sister ship of the Titanic, when it struck a mine and sank in the Aegean Sea. She had to jump overboard and was nearly sucked into the Britannic's propellers, but managed to escape with a head injury. Despite surviving 3 massive ship sinkings, Jessup continued to work at sea for many years. She wrote a memoir about her experiences, called The Titanic Survivor, which provides a first-hand account of all 3 of these events. I don't know. I think the first ship sinking, maybe an oopsie, right? The second ship, though, and it being the Titanic, I don't think I would be getting on a ship again after that. Probably wouldn't get on a ship after the first one, really. If I were on a ship and it sank like that in a massive disaster like that, I think I would be done with ships for a while. And I certainly wouldn't be getting on one for the 3rd time. But, she was a strong woman, so stronger than I am. Hans Nelson Langth. Hans Nelson Langth was a Norwegian-American who holds the record for the world's longest beard, measuring an astounding 17 feet and 6 inches long. I got a ways to go. Here's what we know about him. He was born in Norway and immigrated to the United States in 1867, settling in Iowa with his wife and children. He began growing his beard at the age of 19 for a beard growing competition. After winning, he never stopped. See, they used to be so bored in the older times that they would have beard growing competitions. Like that's a long time. Langth spent most of his life as a farmer. For a while, he toured with the circus, showcasing his incredible beard. However, he grew tired of the constant tugging and attention from curious onlookers. He died in 1927 in North Dakota, and his family donated a portion of his beard. They didn't get the whole beard. They just got a portion. Now, I didn't know this because I tend to keep my beard pretty trim, but the average beard stops growing after a few feet. Langth's continued to grow throughout his life. He reportedly kept it braided and coiled to prevent it from becoming a hindrance. I imagine even braided and coiled, it would be quite the hindrance. Someone who has had a beard for a long time now, it reaches a certain length where it becomes non-desirable. And I've never really let it grow much past that length. And you could just sort of feel it. Like you can just sort of feel like it's time to go trim your beard. So I can't imagine letting a beard grow that long. It sounds terrible. Mirin Dao. Mirin Dao was a Dutch performer famous for his unbelievable act of impaling himself with swords and other objects without being injured. He would have assistants run swords and even metal tubes through his body, seemingly piercing vital organs. He appeared to experience no pain or bleeding, and the wounds would apparently heal quickly. Dao would even perform for doctors and would then undergo x-rays which seemed to confirm that the objects were indeed passing through his body. Doctors couldn't explain how he survived these seemingly fatal injuries.
Comment upon the demonstration. His explanation was given in the presence of Chaplain Pincher, Daily Express science correspondent. Here is Chaplain Pincher to report.
You are going to see a man have a 28-inch sword thrust through his body without hurting him. This is no fake, neither is it a miracle. It could probably be done to you if you were willing to submit first to a dangerous operation. My authority for saying this is one of our most distinguished surgeons who saw the film with me. He explained it all this way.
Dao claimed he was not performing a trick, but rather demonstrating a higher power and the ability of the human body to transcend physical limitations through spiritual connection. He believed a divine force protected him. His nickname was the human pincushion. In 1948, Dao died after swallowing a steel needle and refusing medical treatment for several days. His undoing was actually swallowing the needle, not just sticking it into his gut. That's how they get you, right? Now, there are theories as to how he was able to do this, right? Some people believe he was able to do this after years of training, maybe by slowly increasing the size of the piercings and developing a high pain tolerance. Others believe he may have had a unique understanding of anatomy and carefully selected his piercing locations to avoid major blood vessels and organs. Some people believed he may have entered a trance-like state or, a meditative state that would reduce his perception of pain and would potentially slow his bleeding. This sort of reminds me of, those magicians, right? Was it Mind Freak and David Copperfield and stuff like that? And I'm of the opinion he was probably doing some sort of illusion, that there was some sort of smoke and mirrors behind this act. But, take it for how you want. If you want to believe he was, special at figuring out how to pierce himself or, was able to conjure up protection, great. Jeff the Killer original image. So Jeff the Killer is a famous creepypasta, famous story that, was spread online and online forums, and it would circulate with an image purportedly of Jeff the Killer, of a pale grinning figure with lidless eyes. And the thing is, recently people have realized that, hey, we don't know where this original image came from because it's obviously a photoshopped image, right? But people decided they wanted to find, okay, well, what was the original image that was photoshopped here? Nobody knows. Or there's been some search. There's some people who believe they found it, but there's no, real, there's no real consensus that it's been found, at least yet. One of the problems is that there's no real known origin for the Jeff the Killer story. It started in Japanese image boards and made its way to, English image boards and then, spread online. And since they can't find the source of it, they can't find the source of the picture. Recently, a YouTuber named Mudahar, his handle is Some Ordinary Gamers, has offered a bounty for information leading to the original image. There have been leads. There have been people chasing down things and finding, less manipulated pictures, but the actual picture has not been found. And, people have said, make Mudahar pay up. And I support that. I think Mudahar is a nice guy. I like his videos, but make him pay up. So hopefully someday they'll find this picture and Mudahar will have to open up his big old wallet and pay somebody. The afterlife. This is a massive one, right? But, nobody knows what happens when you die. And there's all sorts of beliefs about what happens when you die. Basically, every culture has multiple beliefs about what happens when you die. Some people believe in heaven or a heaven-like place that you go when you die. Some people believe that nothing happens when you die. As someone who's not religious or someone who was raised Catholic and then at a young age decided he was no longer interested in being religious, as you watch people you love pass, you sort of start to understand that the idea of heaven seems nice. And, when you worry about what happens when you pass, or, when I worry about what happens when I pass and the people I love, it sort of scares me that, I would like them to believe that, there was something else for me. As I've gotten older, it's not really that I'm afraid of dying. I'm afraid of how the people I love will be able to be after I'm gone. And I know that sounds selfish or whatever, but I just think that when I pass, I want to be able to tell people that I love that it's going to be okay. And I want them to believe that it's okay. And I want them to believe that whatever makes them feel okay is where I am. Gary Hoy. Oh boy, Gary Hoy. Gary Hoy was a lawyer. Imagine that. And he died in a pretty tragic situation. He was trying to demonstrate the strength of the windows in his office building. Gary worked in the Toronto Dominion Center, which is a skyscraper in Toronto, Canada. He had a habit of throwing himself against the glass windows of his office to demonstrate their strength to visitors. He had apparently done this many times before without any issues. On this day, however, he was giving a group of students a tour of the building. He threw himself against this window on the 24th floor, and while the glass didn't shatter, the window frame popped out of its setting, and Hoy fell to his death 24 floors down. Don't throw yourself against windows, and especially don't throw yourself against windows when you're really high up. Seems like a really stupid thing for someone who's presumably pretty smart to him, or that it's sad that this happened to him, and I'm sure it traumatized the students. I can't imagine being a law student witnessing that, sort of at the start of your career. But it's a pretty crazy story. The Gibbons Sisters. June and Jennifer Gibbons were two identical twins from Wales who were convicted of murdering their parents in 1965. Their case is one of the most notorious crimes in British history. Their parents, William and Edith Gibbons, were found bludgeoned to death in their home on October 29, 1965. From the beginning, the police focused on the twin sisters as the prime suspects. They were the last people seen with their parents alive, and there was evidence that they have been arguing with their parents on the night of the murders. The sisters were arrested and initially confessed to the crime, claiming they had killed their parents to stop them from beating them. However, they later recanted their confessions, maintaining their innocence. Despite recanting their confessions, the sisters were convicted of murder and sentenced to life in prison. Now, many people believe the sisters were coerced into confessing by the police, and that they were actually innocent. Some experts believe that the sisters may have been suffering from mental illness, which may have influenced their actions. There are theories that suggest that the murders may have been related to hidden family secrets or a cover-up for a crime committed by someone else. The sisters served 12 years in prison before being released on parole in 1977. After prison, they struggled to adjust to life outside prison, facing stigma and prejudice. Jennifer died in 2007 of cancer. June continues to maintain her innocence to this day. John Lang. John Lang was a Fresno, California resident who gained notoriety online in 2016 due to his claims of being stalked and thereafter his mysterious death. John Lang claims that he was being harassed and stalked by the Fresno Police Department after he exposed alleged corruption and misconduct within the department. He posted videos and messages online detailing his experiences, claiming he was under constant surveillance and that he had received death threats. Lang expressed increasing fear for his safety in his online posts, stating that he believed the police were trying to kill him. On January 20th, 2016, Lang was found dead in his burning home, a result of a house fire. Initial reports suggested he had stab wounds, but the official cause of death was ruled smoke inhalation. The strange circumstances surrounding his death have fueled suspicion among people online that he may have been murdered despite the official ruling. Now, he had a YouTube channel, and you can find, you can go to Lang Marine, which is the title of his YouTube channel, the name of his YouTube channel, and you can follow his words, as he said them. Conspiracy theories prop up whenever there's sort of these initial reports, and those initial reports change into something else. And, it's understandable. People get these initial reports and they believe, they decided to cover up, so they changed it. But as everybody knows, when something first happens, there's generally a lot of chaos. There's a race to report, and sometimes people get details wrong. So this is an internet rabbit hole. There are a lot of really good videos on YouTube to watch if you really want to look into this. I don't know. I mean, I think it's probably most likely that he died as a result of the fire. But, stranger things have happened, right? I'm going to butcher this one, but Eon Hi. Eon Hi was a South Korean actress and model. She was also a YouTuber. Her last video, which was posted on her YouTube channel in July 2020, has become a source of speculation and another one of these internet rabbit holes because of how strange the video was and the tragic circumstances surrounding her death. The video begins as a typical get ready with me style vlog with her talking to the camera about her skincare routine. About 48 seconds into the video, a strange glitch occurs. The audio continues normally, but the video begins to buffer and repeat certain frames for almost a full minute.
그냥 지금 준비 없이 그냥 나오자마자 화장대에 앉아서 즉흥적으로 해보려고 카메라를 켰습니다. 아 시원해. 아직 머리도 안 말렸는데 진짜 리얼로 보여주려고 정말 평소에 쓰는 나이트 케어가 어떻게 되는지 순서도 지금 즉흥적으로 제일 첫 번째는 토너를 화장솜에 묻혀서 닦아내야겠죠? 아주 유명한 이 독도 토너라는
Some viewers interpret the repeated frames and the glitch itself as a cryptic message or a sign of distress. Others believe it was a technical error. She was found unconscious at her home in September 2020, just a few weeks after posting the video. She was later pronounced dead. Her death was ruled that she unalived herself. The timing of her death and the unusual glitch in her final video have led to much speculation about what happened. Some believe that the glitch was a cryptic message, a deliberate cry for help, or a hidden message about her struggles. Others have suggested that the glitch was either a simple technical malfunction or that she intentionally included the glitch for artistic or personal reasons. This has become an internet rabbit hole. People want to find deeper meaning in this video, and I suspect it's most likely that there really isn't much deeper meaning. I suspect it was likely a glitch, or maybe, an artistic, editing technique. But, the important thing to remember here is this is someone who lost their life, and she had loved ones and people who cared about her, and she's no longer here. So, as exciting as it is to have this idea of, this crazy internet story, it's more important to remember, this was a person. This person had a family. This person had friends. This person had loved ones, and she's no longer with us, tragically. The Solder Children. The Solder Children and their disappearance is an American unsolved mystery. On Christmas Eve, 1945, a fire broke out in the Solder family home in Fayetteville, West Virginia. While George and Jenny Solder and 4 of their 9 children escaped, 5 children, Maurice, Martha, Louis, Jenny, and Betty, were never seen again. The fire started late on Christmas Eve, and despite the family's efforts to escape and a call for help, the house burned to the ground quickly. No trace of the 5 missing children were ever found in the ashes, despite extensive searches. There were suspicious circumstances surrounding the fire that have raised questions about what could have happened to these children. There was a phone call before the fire with a strange voice asking for someone unknown to the family. There was also a possible sighting of the children in a passing car the night of the fire. The Solder parents never gave up hope that their children were alive, and they dedicated their lives to searching for them, following up on leads, and erecting a billboard with pictures of the missing children. The Solders believe their children were kidnapped, potentially by someone with a grudge against George Solder, who was an Italian immigrant outspoken against Mussolini. Over the years, there have been several alleged sightings of the children, but none that were ever confirmed. The official cause of the fire was faulty wiring, but the Solders always believed it was arson. There are some theories that suggest that the children were taken by an organized crime ring. Some believe the children may have been taken to Italy, while others think that they may have been raised in another part of the United States under new identities. This is a sad story. I think it's most likely the children died in the fire, but I don't really like thinking about children dying. Paul the Octopus. Paul the Octopus was, surprise, surprise, an octopus who became a global sensation during the 2010 FIFA World Cup for his incredible ability to predict the results of football, soccer matches. Here's how it worked. Paul's caretakers would present him with 2 clear plastic boxes, each containing a tasty mussel, I love mussels, and decorated with the flags of the 2 competing teams. Paul would choose a box to open and eat the mussel, and whichever box he chose was considered his prediction for the winning team. His predictions were incredible. First, in the Euro 2008 tournament, he correctly predicted the outcome of 4 out of 6 matches involving Germany. In 2010, for the 2010 World Cup in South Africa, he correctly predicted the winners of all 7 of Germany's matches, including their loss to Spain in the semifinal. He then correctly predicted Spain's victory over the Netherlands in the final. You know, we see stuff like this all the time where like there's a crab or a dog or a camel or a bear that predicts like the Super Bowl or the World Series or whatever. And it just sort of becomes one of these good stories. You know, I feel like that this is likely, this is indeed true, right? And that's sort of an assumption, right? That this is real and their caretakers were telling the truth that he was accurately picking these things. Or when there was evidence, that there was no manipulation of the evidence, right? Others say that this was just random chance. This was just random accuracy. Others suggest that he may have been subconsciously influenced by his caretakers. So I don't know. It's a fun story. It's a cool story about an octopus. The piranha scene from Cannibal Holocaust. Oh boy. Now, I don't know if you've seen this movie. It's overhyped. It's not great. Not very good at all. But there was a piranha scene in the 1980 Italian horror film Cannibal Holocaust. And it's considered one of the most infamous and controversial in cinematic history. It depicts a graphic and disturbing attack on a group of indigenous people by a swarm of piranhas. A group of indigenous people were forced into the river by the film crew, who were documenting their exploration of the Amazon rainforest. The crew threw chunks of raw meat into the water, which would attract a large swarm of piranhas. And the piranhas ended up attacking the people in the water and caused severe injuries and death in some cases. This is an extremely graphic and violent scene. Obviously, this was a controversial scene for a variety of reasons. First believe, from an animal cruelty perspective, that the piranhas were deliberately agitated so that they would be aggressive. This film is also very controversial for not only the violence, but its very exploitive portrayal of indigenous people. This movie was banned in several countries and is heavily censored in others due to its graphic content. If this is something you want to see, I'm sure you can find it. I don't know. I wouldn't seek it out. Judge Joseph Crater. Judge Joseph Crater was a New York State Supreme Court justice who vanished without a trace in 1930. Creating one of the most enduring mysteries of the 20th century. His disappearance sparked a massive investigation and captivated the public imagination and received a lot of press, but the case is still unsolved. Crater was a respected judge, and he had a promising career as a judge. He was appointed to the New York Supreme Court by Governor Franklin Delano Roosevelt. On August 6, 1930, Crater vanished after leaving a restaurant in Manhattan. He was last seen hailing a taxi, and no one ever saw or heard from him again. His disappearance coincided with an investigation into judicial corruption, raising suspicions of foul play. He was also known to have ties to Tammany Hall, the powerful political machine that controlled New York City at the time. There was an extensive investigation into his disappearance, numerous leads and theories, but there's never been any conclusive evidence to explain what happened to him. Some people believed he was murdered. Some people believe he may have died accidentally and his body was disposed of to avoid scandal. And some believe he staged his own disappearance to escape his life, protect himself from danger, or maybe he just didn't want to, escape his life. He just didn't want to do it anymore. I think it's probably most likely foul play. It's usually the case whenever you're talking about, connected political people disappearing. I find it really unlikely, but, it was the 1930s, so he may have been able to just sort of disappear. Ogopogo. Ogopogo is a lake monster said to inhabit the Okanagan Lake in British Columbia, Canada. It's basically the Canadian Loch Ness Monster. So it's like Nessie, but more polite, wears a lot of denim. Now, stories of Ogopogo predate the European arrival in Canada. However, he became popular in the early 20th century. He's described as a large serpentine creature with multiple humps and a horse-like head. There have been hundreds of reported sightings of Ogopogo over the years, with some accounts going back to the 19th century. There are blurry photos, just like Nessie, and videos that purport to show Ogopogo, but none of these are clear and conclusive. Ogopogo has become an important part of the folklore in the area and a popular tourist attraction. It's the Nessie comparison is apt here. It's Nessie, or it's like Nessie. Maybe it's a misidentification of other animals. Maybe there is a real creature in there that, no one's ever been able to catch or get a good picture of. Maybe it's just a hoax. But, I like cryptids, as I've said. I like cryptids. I like Ogopogo. I want him to be real. I want to believe. Hey, this has been your best friend Kenny. Thank you for watching my video. Please subscribe, like, and share. Go ahead and follow me on Twitter and TikTok. My username is AKBrews. And if you've got a spooky or disturbing story you would like me to research, or if you just want to chat, send me an email. My email is thespookylawyer@gmail.com. Thank you, and stay spooky.